architecture professional thinking about using a Mac in your practice, or already are using a Mac in your practice, in a sea of PC users potentially in your office and dealing with some of the issues? In either case, today we're going to cover 5 pros and cons for using your Mac in your architecture, design, or even engineering firm practice. And here to help me unpack this is the CEO and founder of ArcIT, a guy who founded a company that actually supports architecture and design firms and allows them to do their best work through taking care of their IT. Boris, hello, welcome. Great to see you today.
Hey, Alex, great to see you as well. Hi, everyone.
Are you ready for the battle?
I'm ready.
Here's how it is. So here in Design Under Influence, our show is focused on one thing, and that is to help you make your firm technology a competitive advantage for your firm. Okay. And we hear this a lot. And in fact, we have a lot of customers who we support through both Mac and PC. And we do get a lot of questions on whether should I get a Mac as my next computer or not. A lot of people use Mac for personal and then use PC for business. So we're going to unpack all of this and help you kind of make that decision based on data, information, and facts, which we're about to cover. Also, to know that I am a Mac user, lifetime, and Boris is a PC user, lifetime. Now, in my other business, I had to implement PCs, and they're actually pretty good. They came a long way. It's been a while since I touched one, and I've been pleasantly surprised. However, in my opinion, Macs win, but I'm going to hold that and have you make that decision after we finish. So, Boris, number one, I'm going to go with pro. You're going to go with con, and then we're going to kind of chop it up and maybe use some stories and experiences that we had supporting our clients with either of those platforms. Number one, I would say number one reason I and a lot of people like me use Macs is user experience, and I break it down into three kind of subcomponents. So user experience to me means it's easy to use, it's fast, responsive, and then it's also aesthetically pleasing. It's like Tesla, a good place to be for those of you who drive a Tesla, for example, or maybe whatever your favorite car, Porsche or whatever. It's a good place to be. That seems the same way. Like I want to put my hands on that Mac keyboard. It's just a good place to be. The mouse moving fast. So overall user experience. So I would say that's a number one pro, and why people really like to go with Mac. What do you think, and how do you compare that to the PC experience?
Well, in my opinion, and I've been using a Mac as well, just not for all of my business stuff, right? In my opinion, the PC has come a long way. The Windows 10 operating system, and now Windows 11 is coming out pretty soon, is actually all the things you just mentioned. From my standpoint, they feel very, very similar as far as the design of the user interface. And yeah, let's face it, I've been using a PC since Windows 3.1 days. So I'm kind of used to all of the quirkiness of it, possibly, but it has come a long way. Plus, they're now designing the user experience so that, the apps are the center of the experience, right? Kind of similar to what Mac has been doing already for all these years. It's the apps that drive the user experience and not necessarily the operating system itself. Like they're trying to get the operating system out of the way.
But I sense the but there. What is the but there? Because we're talking about business, not personal use. Tell me what the but is.
So now so Windows is catching up on the user experience. That's part one. And also looking at the Macs, it is harder to use Macs. It is great and easy to use it when you're a single person or maybe a family, right? Where everything is synchronizing nicely using your iCloud accounts. When you take that on a business side, it's completely different. You still need to utilize third-party applications. You can't just use iCloud to sync everything because your employees may not have iCloud accounts, or, it's not as secure, right? One of the things that it's basically a consumer grade product. Like you can set different permissions. Like there's a lot more difficulty with using these tools in a business setting for specifically, if we just take file sharing, for example, and the iCloud accounts, that's where it comes into play. You can share files with everybody, but you can set certain permissions. You can have separate things that only you have access to. So things like that become more difficult to help you segregate your business life and your personal life, for example.
Yeah, that's very well said, and I've experienced that. But I also, a little bit counter to that before we go to number two is the Mac shop. If you're a Mac shop, that all of that can be mapped out, and all the sharing becomes, it makes more sense and it's easier. But as you mentioned in the pre-show, you still have your personal life, even in a Mac shop. That's always my worry, because my iPhotos, sync to my iCloud, whatever, and then it's a company computer, and the centralized IT has access to all my stuff. That was a little bit of a drawback of being a Mac shop to me. But Mac shop, I don't know if you have, if you've experienced like a company that's all Mac. There's a lot of pluses, but that's the minus, like the personal life that gets kind of connected to all of this, and everybody potentially can see all your stuff.
Right. And that's a big deal, right? Privacy and security is a big deal. You don't want to have your personal data cross over into your business side for everybody to see. And you don't want your business data to then reside on all the other, personal devices you may have, or your kids may have, or your family may have, because that creates other issues, right? Your kids delete something, install something, and stuff like that. So there needs to be a segregation point, and that's what we need to understand. Whether it's having two different accounts, but then that means having two different devices. It becomes more difficult in a business setting.
Gotcha. All right, so let's hit number two. So I think those are very well made points, and I think right now we're at a tie, because I'm talking about user experience and overall speed, and that's important for productivity, and aesthetics also important for mindset, right? And how it makes you feel. In a lot of ways, I feel like kind of informs your decisions, informs better decisions. Anyway, that's just my personal thing. But let's say it's a tie. Number two, I would say security on Macs has been traditionally, and sort of, I think everyone sort of buys into that concept. Security has been better than PC. What do you have to say to that?
I'm just gonna smile. So Apple does a great job of not only securing their devices, but also marketing that point, right? And that marketing is not always true, because, there's a few things that we need to consider. Number one is, yes, historically, there has been less cybersecurity attacks on Macs than on PCs. But there's also a reason for that. There's a lot less Macs being used in a business setting than there are PCs. I mean, they're expanding market share there, but it's still less than 20% right now. So if we take, if we correlate that, and we proportionally take, PCs have more attacks, but they're also used 80% of the time, you kind of get to a same point where both devices are not what I would call 100% secure, obviously. So even though Apple does certain things, for example, locks down the App Store, and only content that passes through security checks can be in the App Store. That's great. But if people are not using the App Store and they're still searching online for some free tool to use, it can easily be just installed just like that, through a browser, downloading the installation file, and then you're in a similar position where you would be with the PC. And the fact that Apple by default does not include any antivirus software and doesn't promote installing third-party antivirus software like we know to do on a PC, it actually makes you a little less secure than a normal PC would be.
Yeah, and from personal experience, I would say there's a lot of overconfidence in this Mac security that I don't take for granted anymore. But there's overconfidence out there that leads to bad things. Because we think our Macs are so superior and secure, we tend to not always use common sense, and that's me included, right? In what we do on the internet, and how we interact with Wi-Fi networks, and how much we're able to trust, every aspect of this tool. So I think you got a really good point there. I think I will probably give this one to you because in the business setting, that overconfidence or the lack of antivirus software can potentially lead to big problems, especially because a lot of us use cloud-based tools, Google Docs, and all those things. So it really doesn't matter what your endpoint is. You can get in trouble. You can get software and viruses uploaded into your cloud, and then that's trouble. Okay, so number 3, and feel free to interject here if you have a story or something like that to share. But if not, I'm just going to hit number 3.
Let's go.
Reliability and stability. So again, to me, productivity, being in the right set of mind to make these creative decisions in my work, and I'm sure other people could be similar, is like, I don't want to wait for something to download. Like, the most frustrating thing I have with Mac right now, you know what it is? It's Excel verifying its licensing every time before I launch it. So I launch Excel and I wait 20 seconds. So it's PC-based kind of little issue that it's coming through my Mac, and it's super frustrating. Everything else has been incredibly reliable and stable. Yes, occasionally I'll have to restart, but man, most of the time it's just working. I want to get in there, I want to open, and I want to work. I have an idea, I need to get it out there, I need to design it, I need to push it through. It's an email, it's a communication, it's a drawing, it's whatever it is, it's working, it's reliable. What do you have to say to that?
Oh, that's probably, for me, that's my biggest pro of using a Mac, right? And, you have to applaud Apple for that. But there's a specific reason for that as well, right? One is the operating system is specifically designed for the hardware that you're running the operating system on, right? There's a few flavors of that hardware, and then, the Mac OS has been thoroughly tested to make sure that there's no bugs and no issues. And if there are bugs, they're doing a great job of releasing updates really quickly. So you definitely have to applaud them for that. And then in addition to that, as we mentioned in the App Store, there's specific, software that's been selected and who also has to pay a fee to be in that App Store, obviously, to develop content for the Mac. That, it works and been tested on this hardware. So it's much easier to create software that is less buggy. Now, the con to that is that not all the software can, not all software developers, and we have a few of those instances specifically in the architecture, engineering, and design space, right? Not all software developers want to go into the App Store, pay the fees, and then spend significant time and money developing things for the Mac, right? Because if we look at a business setting, and we talked about that 80-20 breakdown, it's only 20% of the people that they can, why would they invest into 20% when they can put more resources into the 80%, which is the PC-based market, right? So in architecture, engineering, and design space, for example, Revit is a tool that many architects use, especially for commercial projects and larger projects. And that tool is not available for a Mac, right? Natively for Mac-based. There's some workarounds that people can do, which becomes more difficult. You're basically turning your Mac machine into a Windows machine. And that defeats the whole purpose of this argument, right?
Yeah, this is our most popular video out there right now, by the way, running Revit on Mac OS.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
It's definitely a problem.
Yeah, and another tool which is similar, and they did have a Mac version initially, but they've since end-of-lifed it because, again, they most likely didn't want to invest the resources, is Bluebeam. Bluebeam is a PDF editor, which is very popular in the construction industry, right? It's probably, if you take Bluebeam and then you take the second best commercial PDF editor, which I feel is Adobe Acrobat Pro, in the construction industry, Bluebeam gets about 85% of the market share versus Adobe at 15%. So that tool is also not available for a Mac. So we have I have a couple of offices, they have a PC that just sits there when they need to do Bluebeam because, a lot of, as an architect, when you go for approvals and the building commission, a lot of building commissions use Bluebeam as the native tool for digital approvals, right? So if you don't have to go to the city office and stand there with drawings. You can actually do a digital session through the Bluebeam and Bluebeam Studios, right? So you need to use Bluebeam to streamline the approval process, make it easier for you and your office. But if you're a Mac-based office, you can't use Bluebeam. So you have to have a PC that's there just for that particular purpose, which obviously makes it less efficient and less ideal for a business as a whole.
Yeah, I think I'll give you this one. I think that's it. Specifically, we're talking with the AAC community. You definitely take that one down. So makes a lot of sense. And thanks for expanding on the topic. So let's hit number 4. I'd say processing power is a significant advantage of Mac. You mentioned some specs before the show. I'll let you elaborate on this. But what does PC have to answer? How does PC answer Mac's power and just raw processing power?
So it's an interesting topic because if we remember up until the most recent introduction of the M1 chip, Macs used Intel processors in all of their products, which is very similar to what PCs have been using for a long, long time as well. So the same i5 and i7 processors and i9 processors were in both Macs and PCs. Now, to lower cost of the devices and to also improve performance, Apple decided to switch to an M1 chip, which is, in all the benchmarks, has been shown to be way more, I guess, to have way better performance than the standard Intel chips. And that's great. I mean, they've basically increased the battery life. They've made the computer perform much faster, but there's also a small caveat with that too. Not all the application manufacturers, and even up to this point, where M1 chips have been released in last November, so it's been about a year, not all the application people that write applications have been able to natively incorporate M1 support into their applications. So they're using a tool called Rosetta, which is basically converting the application that they wrote for the Intel chip into the M1 code, right? And when that process happens, you're basically losing most of the gains that you would have, performance gains that you would have otherwise. So if it was a native application, it'd probably perform much faster. But since you're using this conversion, the performance is about the same.
Gotcha. So I'll call this a tie. I think what you're saying makes sense. I think maybe in the future, Mac can break out from raw power and speed, just that horsepower stuff. But PC is also no slouch, right? They're going to be right behind it. So I think it's a tie right there. Number 5, and the last one, and this is the good one. Less support required. So because of all the things we've discussed, it's my perception as a Mac user, I require less to no IT support to run my machine. What do you have to say to that?
I would agree in a lot of cases, right? And again, if we're looking at this as using a Mac for personal home use, right, with your family, most likely that is the case. Like, I don't know, how many times have you gone to the Apple store?
None.
Great. But when we're talking about business, and as we talked about the additional applications that we need to run on top of our Macs to perform various business functions, it becomes more evident that there is some support required. And again, it may not be support with the hardware itself, but it is with how to run applications on top of that hardware. Many of the issues we faced last year was because of the M1 conversion that I've mentioned previously. For example, applications like, some of our clients use Box as their file repository. So applications like Box Drive, which worked fine with the previous version of processor, wouldn't work at all. And they're only in beta right now. They don't have support for that yet. So there's things like that, compatibility issues and things that you need to think about as a business and as a business owner, that you need to make those decisions beforehand, right? So you need to have that information beforehand. And unfortunately, not a lot of people think about it. They just, Mac is known to work. I'm sure they've done all their testing. So I'm just going to go out and buy a new Mac, right? And when they do that, they're like, oh, this application doesn't work. This doesn't work. And now as a business owner, you're losing productivity. You're stuck. So that's where support comes in. That's where I think we help our customers in making those decisions and then trying to figure out these issues as they happen in the business setting.
Yeah. And some of the things I've heard our customers say with their past providers is when I have a Mac and most of my other team is on PC, I submit a support ticket, someone calls me back. As soon as they find out it's a Mac, they have to go either re-educate themselves and come back to the issue, or have somebody else, a Mac expert, to call me back and solve this issue, which creates friction, which creates just an annoying way to solve problems. Try to instead of doing it once and solve it, you have multiple touch points and you have to interrupt your day multiple times, which is again bad experience for users. Now here at Arc IT, of course, we don't do it because we're half Mac, half PC. No, we're really all a lot of PC, but we love Mac, don't we?
Well, we're 60-40.
All right. 60-40. So that's actually closer than I thought. Okay. So it's 60-40. So we natively support Macs as well as PCs. So at the end of the day, out of all these pros and cons, I think score-wise, I don't know, I have to calculate. I think we're pretty much even. I think it was like 2 wins, 2 losses, and a tie, or something like that, or 2 ties. I can't remember. Either way, you will interpret this content as you see fit for yourself. Because look, if you already set your mind on Mac, I'm not going to change your mind. Boris not going to change your mind. That's great. The good news is,
we'll still support you.
Choose Arc IT is your IT provider, and we will support you either way. We're built to support both of these platforms, and all we do is support architecture, design, engineering firms, and help make their IT their competitive advantage, so they can focus on their best work and not worry about things breaking on them all the time. If you have any questions, or if you want to, throw us a quick note, go to getarcit.com. It'll sign on the screen there for you. And we'd love to speak with you. We'd love an opportunity to work with you. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope this was helpful.
Thanks, everyone.